All right, man. Welcome back to the Man Talk Show. Practical tools for you to train to be a better man. This is not therapy. This is training, the tools that you need to succeed in love and life and business. Today, we're going to be talking about something that I have seen over and over again. The notion that you, as a man, that most men at some point will feel invisible to women. We're going to talk about why that is. Why are most men invisible to the majority of women? There's a small percentage of men that aren't. And then how do you go about fixing that? Why is this in place and what do you do about it? Here's the brutal truth. In the dating marketplace, most men feel or just don't even exist to most women. Not because women are cruel. It's not because women are mean. It's not because women don't like men, although that might be a small percentage of women that just like ignore men because they don't like them. But it's because from their perspective, you haven't been worth noticing yet. Now, this can happen in the dating world, but this can also happen in a relationship where your woman stops noticing you almost entirely. And this is what has started to become called the sexual marketplace value, your sexual marketplace value, or the sexual marketplace by people like Dr. Orion Taraban and a few other people. But the idea here is that men and women operate in an economic-like system when it comes to attraction. And in that system, most men are or at least they feel like they are products that can't get noticed. They're shoved to the back of the shelf. They're accumulating dust. They can't get noticed on the dating apps, in the coffee shop, at the gym, at the grocery store. For the life of them, they just can't get a woman's attention, and it's very frustrating. I remember having a conversation with a good friend of mine who's actually quite successful. He's, largely kind of, dresses very well. I remember talking to him years ago and he's like, man, I just cannot get a woman's attention on these dating apps. It is so frustrating. So today I'm going to break down exactly why that happens and more importantly, how you can begin to reposition yourself so that you are on the front display of the line that women want to interact with. And again, a lot of this, it is not about doing this for them. It's not about doing this work for women. A lot of guys get caught in that trap. What this is really about is that as you focus on betterment for yourself, as you focus in on developing yourself, there is something naturally attractive about that to women. So I want to make that very clear out the gates because for a lot of men, where they go awry in this is, I'm going to run around and do a whole bunch of things to try and become better positioned for women, but they're still doing the same thing. Look at me, pick me. So first, where I want to start is understanding why most men are invisible. And in this framing of the sexual marketplace value, what you'll find is that everybody has a kind of score. Everybody has a kind of score that is attributed to them based on the traits, based on the value, based on the things that you bring to the table. Physical appearance, status, social proof, career, personality, kindness, stuff like that, lifestyle. And most men oftentimes overestimate what their value is, and they underinvest in the attributes that actually make them attractive to women, that actually gain and garner attention from women. And a good sort of data point on this, a good example of this that you've probably seen and heard is really dating apps, right? Women are swiping right on 5% of men on these dating apps. And that's not because the 95%, if you're one of the men that you're like, yeah, I've been on dating apps, I couldn't get a woman to swipe right on me and message me and go on dates. It was just brutal. It's not that you're ugly or unattractive. It's that the 95% of those men that don't get any attention on the dating apps, they don't stand out. You aren't sort of exuding some of the markers that would normally grab a woman's attention. So women have an abundance of choice in today's society, in today's culture. Maybe you don't like that. Maybe you're fine with that. However you feel about that, the reality is that especially when a woman is in her her 20s and her 30s, she has an abundance of choice. And in this high choice environment, you've probably heard me talk about this before. What ends up happening is that women have the Cheesecake Factory effect, which is that they have such a big choice. This is the choice paradox. They have so many options that it becomes challenging for them to choose. And the average man just kind of blends into the background. And so it's very hard to even garner a woman's attention and to get her to start to know who you are. So here's a little bit of an analogy that I have found to be very helpful. Imagine that you are walking through a big marketplace, and some of those stores that are in the marketplace, they have very clean glass windows and they're well lit, and everything is on display very nicely. Everything's sort of meticulously aligned and it's clean in there. And you think, something valuable must be in that shop. And you continue to walk and you notice that a lot of the stores are kind of dusty. They're half empty. The lights are flickering. The products all sort of not neatly aligned, and it's sort of disheveled. And you don't even bother to step into those shops. You assume that what's in there is not worth your time. And this is how most men present themselves in the dating world, okay? This is how most men present themselves in the dating world. And I did this for a very long time. I didn't really care about my appearance. And for a while it worked, but it worked because I was unintentionally sort of embodying the bad boy. I had the 1,000cc bright motorcycle, with the helmet with spikes on it. And I was putting out this very certain vibe, I guess you could say, to women that I didn't even know. But on my everyday average sort of, how I would dress, I didn't really care about my appearance. I wouldn't iron my clothes. Everything was sort of wrinkled. I didn't really have any style whatsoever. I didn't care if I was groomed or shaved or had combed my hair. That kind of stuff just didn't really matter to me. And this is how most men present themselves. Your storefront is your presentation. And honestly, the first 30 seconds that a woman sees you, what they're looking at is your grooming, your style, that's kind of like your window display, your energy, your posture, what vibe you're giving off, and then the social proof. Who are you with? What are the lifestyle signals of what you're portraying, especially on the dating apps? But this plays in marriages and relationships as well. What happens is that for a lot of men, you start to get comfortable in your relationship and you stop you stop taking care of the storefront, right? And so you stop grooming, you stop taking care of yourself, you stop dressing nice, you stop taking care of your body or eating healthy. And all of a sudden, it's like everything starts to fall apart. And you become, and I know that this maybe will annoy some of you that I'm using this terminology, but you become a product, or you become a person that woman looks at and then says, I don't know if I'm as interested in this. And then they see, their single or divorced friends that are out there, going on dates with these guys who are very well put together, that are in good shape, that are taking care of themselves. And they're like, my husband is just, or my boyfriend's just sitting here in his boxers and, his t-shirt, eating Doritos on the couch. And I don't think that, he does that every single night. That's not exactly super attractive. So if these things aren't in order, you're grooming a little bit of style, how you hold yourself, how you carry yourself, your posture, your energy, the social proof, the men that you surround yourself with, your lifestyle. What does your lifestyle look like? Do you have a life? Those are all markers of status, of value to women. And so there's kind of a harsh value curve where for women, value peaks earlier in life, right? And most men know this, right? If you're a guy, that for a lot of women, their value sort of peaks early in life. But for men, it's the inverse. Your value builds and builds over time. This is why when you look at some of the dating data, you can see like men in their 18 to 29, they have gone through waves of having the least amount of dates and least amount of relationships that we've seen in a very long time. And that's because a man 18 to 29 doesn't have the same level of status, of value, of maturity, of emotional intelligence that a man in his 30s and 40s will. And so oftentimes women in their sort of peak value will start to look for men that are older, or at the very least, they will start to look for men who have the signals of being more mature, more put together. And for a lot of men, you will start to come into your sort of peak value, if we want to put it like that, in your 30s and 40s if you invest in these assets that will compound over time. Things like your income, things like your physique, your level of confidence and self-perception. Your social network is actually an extremely underrated data point that women look for. I often say to men that one of the things that women look at is they date men who have good men around them. If they're looking at a guy and they're like, oh, he's a great guy, but then he's surrounded by a whole, for lack of a better term, a whole bunch of losers, that is going to escalate her perceived value in you. And same would probably be true for you, right? If you were dating a woman, but her girlfriends were just like complete disasters, you'd be like, there's something off here. There's something going on. So your social network is really important. Your ability to have refined social skills. Women want to know that they can take you into most environments and you're not just going to survive, but you're going to thrive. They want to know that they can take you to the dinner party with their girlfriends. They want to know that they can take you, that you can take them to a business meeting and you're going to handle yourself, that they can take you to the family and friends. Those types of things are incredibly important. If you're the guy that is just chronically aloof and shut down and can't engage in a conversation, those things are going to diminish her perception. And honestly, those things are going to diminish your self-perception of worth, value, confidence, self-respect. So again, all of these things, what I want you to know, this isn't about developing certain attributes and characteristics to get women. It's that when you as a man develop these attributes and characteristics within yourself and for yourself, you naturally become much more attractive. You start to become that thing on the shelf that all of a sudden lots of women are walking past and they're looking at it and they're like, oh, I like the looks of that. That's really well put together. So here are some actionable steps to become more visible to women, regardless of whether you're single and dating or you are in a relationship. These steps will help you to get more visibility from the women that are in your life. So number one, audit your storefront. Audit your storefront. Really get a clear estimation of how you dress yourself, how you present yourself. Do you shave on a regular basis? Can you get a haircut that actually suits your face and your head? Can you make sure that that's something that you commit to on a regular basis? I can't tell you how many women that I've found over time. When I remember in my 20s when I was just disheveled all the time, would comment on like not having the hair on the back of my neck cut. And I was like, why do you care about this? Like, why are, I worked at this restaurant and there was all these servers and they'd always give me a hard time about it. And I was like, why do you even care? But they notice these things, right? That's the storefront. So get a haircut that suits your face. Upgrade your wardrobe and start to have nice, well-fitting, timeless pieces. It doesn't mean that everything that you wear has to be expensive and exquisite. It just means that your wardrobe doesn't just consist of only, old Nikes and some, graphic No Fear t-shirts. There's a throwback for you. I actually have one or two No Fear t-shirts in my room. And make sure that you groom yourself, whatever your style is. Make sure that you are taking care of your facial hair and make sure that you have like a nice deodorant and maybe cologne for yourself that really suits who you are. Number two, build a little bit of scarcity into your interactions. And this is the notion that there's affection is earned. Affection is earned. A lot of times, especially nice guys, you anxious attached men, the people pleasers, you are flooding women with attention. And it's almost like this frantic waving from the beach. It's like Tom Hanks in whatever the movie was, Lost or something like that, where he's stuck on the island and he's got like the big help sign, waving at people coming by. A lot of the times we as men, because there is an attention deficit that so many of us experience, you get into this state of unintentionally just throwing yourself at women at the first sign of attention. Now, what that means is make sure that your availability is slightly limited. Make sure that you are doing things in your life so that when you start to date or even when you're married, that you have other things going on in your life. It is, for a lot of women, is problematic when a man has nothing else going on in his life. I cannot tell you how many couples I've worked with where a woman's like, his whole life is me. He does nothing outside of our relationship. He doesn't really have friends. He's not in clubs. He doesn't really have much of a lifestyle. So make sure that there is a reciprocation of attention, that you're not bombarding that woman with messages constantly, that you are all the time doing all of the legwork to get attention from her. And this doesn't mean that you start to, pull back entirely and you start to play games. It simply means really check whether or not you are flooding her. Next is really invest in long-term assets. Long-term assets. These can be things that develop your social acumen. They can improve your status. They can be clubs, communities, activities that you enjoy that give you the opportunity to really socialize, to really engage with people, that introduce you to high quality people. Again, I cannot stress enough how valuable it is for you to be around high quality men. If you are in a club, a community, you're in a kind of a network or whatever it is, a society, and there's high quality people in there, they are naturally going to push you, inspire you. You are going to want to elevate yourself as a man. That will build self-respect. And that will signal to women that there is value. There's another piece of value there for you. Plus, it's going to push you. So develop a skill, develop a passion that gives you some type of social currency. You should be able to, I think I'm very thankful. I have so much experience in different fields. I worked construction. I sang opera. I sold vacuums door to door. I worked for Apple. I sold stereo equipment. So I've kind of done it, in so many different industries. I've worked in tech. I've worked in retail. I worked at a restaurant. I managed a restaurant. I really had a lot of experience in these different fields. And so one of the things that my wife has communicated about, loving about me and being drawn to about me is you can kind of pop me in any situation. I can sit across from a billionaire and have a great conversation. And I can sit across from, a buddy of mine that I've known since childhood that's a plumber, or an electrician and have a really great conversation. So that type of social fluidity and social flexibility is so sought after. And it's going to continue to be something that is incredibly valuable. So again, whether you are single and dating, whether you're in a relationship, that is a skill that you should absolutely look at developing. If you're not too sure where to begin, join the Man Talks Alliance. It is opening here in September. You can check it out in the description below, but join the Man Talks Alliance. There's 800 plus men and growing from around the world. And we teach you self-leadership skills, relationship leadership skills, how to lead yourself, how to lead in your relationship, how to find a deeper sense of purpose. So check that out. Next, there's only two more pieces, is improve your physical presence. Now, this isn't just about getting jacked, right? This is about how you carry yourself as a man, how you walk into a room, how you stand, how you sit, being able to occupy a little bit of space, being aware of your posture. All of that will signal confidence when you speak. And a lot of men have become sort of collapsed in and they don't occupy any space, any territory when they are communicating, when they're sitting across from a woman. And for a large part, that can be something that, you don't occupy your own space, since that doesn't feel good for you. Train a couple times a week, train 3-4 times a week. Really, really, really push your body. This is low-hanging fruit for you to increase the perception from women, because what women see is, oh, that man takes care of his body. He must have some type of discipline. I like that. Lastly, learn to signal and not sell. Learn to signal and not sell. Some of you guys in marriages, in your relationships and in dating, you are trying to sell yourself to that woman. So you don't need to convince someone of your value. You just demonstrate it by living your life. So show and don't tell, right? A photo of you hiking in Patagonia, or in the Catskills, or in Colorado, or the Rocky Mountains, says so much more than the words "I'm adventurous" in your bio. And taking action in your relationship and saying, you know what, I'm going to go and hike that trail today, to your partner when you've been talking about going hiking, is way more, it speaks volumes about your nature rather than saying all the things that you want to do. So here's the reality. In a high choice dating environment, in a high choice relationship environment, you can't afford to just be average. And average is invisible. That is what's happening to so many men. And that is part of the demise of a lot of relationships, is that you set into this groove, in this rut of mediocrity and complacency, and you become complacent and you stop respecting who you are as a man. You stop doing the things that you want to do and need to do in order to really like and appreciate yourself, in order to see your own worth as a man, and it starts to collapse your woman's perspective of you. So if your storefront is appealing, if your inventory is rare, just to keep using this analogy, which maybe some of you don't like, but hopefully some of you really get and enjoy, it's about becoming the man that you were meant to be, not to get her, but so that you get yourself, that you have connected deeply with who you are. And as you do that work, it will draw more women in. Because in the marketplace right now, invisibility is a bit of a choice. Invisibility is something that we choose because we don't do the things that we need to do in order to become the man that you're capable of being. So, share, enjoy, man it forward. Let me know what your thoughts are on this video. Until next week, Connor Beaton, signing off.